I know you just joined, but would you like to speak during the visitor section?
No, thank you.
Okay, just double checking. All right, it is 6:30. If everybody would join and stand with me to join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Lupton, would you call the roll?
Mayor Carney?
Here.
Mr. Rucker?
Here.
Giano?
Here.
Hyman?
Here.
Hine?
Here.
Mr. Reed?
Here.
Mr. Carey?
Is there a motion to accept the agenda for the September 27, 2021 meeting?
I would like to amend the agenda, add one item to discussion, and that's the UPCO seat on the Design Review Board.
Are there any other additional amendments to the agenda this evening? Hearing none, would anyone like to make a motion on the amended agenda to approve?
Motion to accept the amended agenda. Second.
Rucker?
Yes.
Giano?
Yes.
Heineman?
Yes.
Hine?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
And is there a motion to accept the council meeting minutes from September 13th, 2021?
Motion to accept the September 13th meeting minutes. Second.
Reed?
Yes.
Hine?
Yes.
Heineman?
Yes.
Giano?
Yes.
Rucker?
Yes.
And this evening, we have visitors that have signed in. The first one is Roberta Scott. If you'd like to come forward, you have 5 minutes, and I will get.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'd like to address the noise concerns that some residents have presented to council regarding loud music coming from the granary. Change is here in Plain City, and as we all know, that change isn't easy for everyone, as one of the council members addressed last council meeting. Plain City is definitely open for business. That being said, we can now differentiate our residential areas from our upcoming business and downtown area. The downtown area is intended to foster a better downtown through urban design. It serves as a center for our businesses, the arts, museums, and entertainment. And the granary gives our residents or our visitors to Plain City something to look forward to each week. People are now desperate for community, wanting to ditch the pandemic blues, meet friends, and welcome our new residents to Plain City. The ability of music to shape our mental health has long been documented by researchers of the National Alliance on Mental Health. Only because I specialize in recreation and parks, I do know music is beneficial. Second of all, most noise, as we know, is airborne, meaning that it is relayed through the atmosphere. I live on North Chillicothe Street, not too far from the granary, in a home that was built 95 years ago, in 1926. As we all know, most of the homes downtown or around the granary were also built in that time frame. Whether you remodeled or refurbished, they still have the structure. While I sit outside, I can hear the sounds of summer. Kids cheering on their ball teams over at the ballpark. I can hear the music in the air on Sundays from the park. And the tractors blowing off steam during the steam threshers. These are all sounds of summer that I look forward to. What causes airborne noise problems, whether it be the loud bass music, loud cars or trucks, motorcycles, anything like that, even people walking and talking, are the elements that the homes do not meet proper standards. It doesn't take a large opening for a great increase in music or noise to take place. My point being, most of the homes that are surrounding the granary weren't built with an amphitheater in mind. My My neighbors' homes are just as old, and I've spoken with a few of them, and they stated they barely hear any noise. And they understand that the granary gives us positives, and that outweighs the negatives. For our residents that live west of the granary, there probably is no buffer between them and the music right now. However, there is already action being taken to update the parking lot, and hopefully the landscaping being planned will provide more of a sound barrier for them on the west side. The granary meets everything that we ask them to. They meet our curfew standards, and the safety of our customers are well met because they have extra security there. I'm asking council to consider all of this and take into consideration that this is just seasonal, or it's the sounds of summer, and to take no action. Before long, we will be stuck inside, so let's enjoy the sounds of summer, because like Simon and Garfunkel said, I don't want to hear the sounds of silence. And one last thing. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Dawson and his staff put on a special event in remembrance of 9/11. And the proceeds from that event were donated to our first responders, our police and our fire department. Thank you, Mr. Dawson, for never forgetting. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott, for speaking this evening. Mr. Lear?
I too am here to speak, wait till the timer.
Oh, you're good.
Okay. I too am here to speak on noise ordinance. I do not have anything written. All I can tell you is that between the last time I spoke and this time, I've made some rounds to do some assessments, both scientifically and audibly. The Apple Watch, as you may know, has a sound meter on it and does pretty accurate readings. And I think Kim will be happy to say that, yes, decibels will not do anything for us. The decibel level is pretty moderate all around. As I talk to you right now, it's probably around 75, 80, and that's me slightly amplifying my voice, right? Out on West First Avenue, where I live, as the woman before said, we do not have anything to block us. The tall building that Tim has so wonderfully restored acts as a sound amplification device or sound reverberation device for the music that is pointing directly at it. So yes, the people over on East First are not getting nearly as much as we are. And I can understand there's all walks of life, right? There's people in their young, 20s, maybe early 30s, that might not have kids yet and might think it's fun, or people that have kids and are retired that, it's great. I myself have a 5-year-old daughter, which we try to get to bed at a considerable time. Now, the weekends, not so much. It's not a big deal. I just worry that, if we don't put this in check, it could become something bigger. And I don't necessarily think that our current noise ordinance really warrants any change so much as just adherence to it. I think, yes, some treatment could be done to the building to help prevent that. I think overall it could be turned down, especially the bass frequencies. I don't think plants or trees are going to help, I'm sorry. I think that's not exactly what we need. But yeah, candidly, it just really sucks to be 35 and sound like you're an old man who's complaining about everything. That sucks. That's what other people, that's what the police force is for, enforcing things that already exist. It shouldn't have to be for me, a musician myself, to come here and tell you that the music is too loud. I've stated this multiple times. I have no problem. In fact, I love what Tim's doing with food, with the atmosphere in general, and the businesses and the buildings that he's reinvigorating downtown. That's a godsend. The music is just loud. And unfortunately, those of us on the west side of Chillicothe, as the woman mentioned, we get the blunt of it. It basically acts like a sound tunnel back towards our businesses. Mr. and Mrs. Yoder, who have lived there for God knows how long, are in direct line of fire from the reverberations of the building. I feel bad for them. It's not as bad at our house. We still hear the bass nonstop. And yeah, would like to not have to. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Lear. Mr. Lane?
Roberta, that was pretty professional. I don't have something like that. I just want to say, you know, it's the noise as well. It sucks. I get it. You know, it's unfortunate. But 8 years ago when we first moved to town, there was nothing to do. Nobody wanted to go to Lee's. No offense, Ron, but that's not what anybody wanted to do. And I was at Pins this weekend with my friends. Sorry, Tim. But we were sitting there, and there was people at the bar that I didn't know discussing leaving Pins and going to the Greenery. And I just turned to my buddies and I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. Plain City is finally attracting people from other parts of town, not just Plain City. And it's just growing. And that's why Lee's completely revamped their place. That's why the bowling alley did a restoration on their place. We are finally a happening town. It's not embarrassing to have people that I know from Dublin and stuff like that drive through the center of town anymore. It's fun. They call me from downtown Columbus, hey, can we go to the Greenery? Can we go to the bowling alley? Yeah, come on, let's do it, it'll be fun. You know, I don't know the answer to the sound, but whatever this town is doing right now, and not with just the Greenery, but with everything, it's starting to be right. It's starting to be a happening place. And it makes me excited. And Roberta said it when she said the positives outweigh the negatives in this scenario. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. And Mr. Dawson.
Okay. I have a few things. First, I wanted to present Chief McKee with a check for $2,000 from Pink Fox Events and the Greenery for the 9/11 event, and this is going towards his Marks Radio. Sorry we didn't come up with a full amount, but I wanted to thank you for everything that you're doing. I hope that we can have another event to give you the rest of the money, because that's what the Greenery is planning on doing, to try to come up with the rest of the money for that radio for you. So I wanted to do that. And I also, while Brian's here, we already donated $500 to Columbus Firefighters Foundation, which is what Chief Kidd asked us to do with $500. And so I wanted to present them with that also. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the alley before I talk about the noise, but the alley closure across from the Greenery, I've never been presented with any plans on the streetscapes at all. Never knew that there was going to be a closure of that alley. Have been given wind from a couple of people, yeah, we've discussed it, but not really made a decision. And so one of my questions is, you know, I guess I'm questioning why there wasn't something similar to what we do for the Design Review Board, which is to send letters out to all the business owners around the area and maybe ask them how that might affect them if there would be something like that closed. It's State Route 161 in Bigelow. It's not a small residential side alley. It is a major alley that leads to State Route 161. In fact, the post office, every single morning, if someone would go there to observe these things, goes right down that alley because it's a direct line into the post office. And so I'm sure that truck is gonna have one heck of a time maneuvering around any other place other than going right down that alley, along with all of my delivery trucks, not all of them, that's an exaggeration, but some of my delivery trucks pull right there instead of blocking State Route 161 and pulling in a turn lane, creating, I know phone calls to Chief McKee in the past, and there's just no other way to deliver food, just like in downtown Columbus, it happens. And so we were avoiding that by having trucks park there and unload and then walk across the street with those goods. So, once again, I'm asking council and I'm asking Mr. Cahall, what data did you use? Was there any data that you used to make that decision as for the village? Because that is a pretty major decision to do, especially on State Route 161, especially in our historic downtown area. Did you use any data whatsoever? And then I do want to talk about the sound ordinance. I have been in front of multiple zoning inspectors, and I hope that you don't run this one off, Ms. Brill. But I've talked to multiple ones. I've talked to multiple council members. I have talked to multiple mayors. This has been going on since 2018. My plans, there's been videos out on Facebook all over the place since 2018, since 2020. Over a year and a half ago, I posted that video about what was going to be going on back there. Went in front of the design review board, and I follow every one of today's sound ordinances. And so all I ask is that, number one, we try to adhere to the sound ordinance that is here today. If you adopt the Hilliard one, that's a whole nother thing that we have residential and business mixed in together. But to give you an update, I contacted Armstrong Acoustical. They have no outdoor products. I use them inside the greenery and inside Pioneer Pizza with acoustics that we put on the ceiling, and that helped tremendously, but they do not have any products that are capable of being outside. I have called Kinetic Noise Control Incorporated, left a message with them, waiting for a call back. I did talk to Bavick Acoustics today, also forwarded that information to the mayor. They'll come out and give a quote, but the first thing they want to do is come out and observe the situation. They'll observe it, and then they're going to come back with a quote as to how much it's going to cost to do an actual sound study, and with real acousticians, because everyone can have their idea about what's going on back there, and everyone thinks they're experts, but an acoustician is an expert. They went to school for that, and that's what I want. I'm not going to just throw money at a problem and not really solve a problem or not help the problem whatsoever. And that's what that's what I feel like being pushed towards, and I don't think that's the proper solution. I think the proper way to do it is to take our time and make sure that if there is something that is reasonably priced out there that will help absorb some of the sound, and so that way it doesn't echo as far, I think that's the solution. So they're gonna be doing that over the next month to 6 weeks. Of course, they're gonna have to do it within the next probably 4 weeks, because I don't have entertainment outside after that. So the other thing I'm thinking is that same thing that we just kind of talked about with other people is that, what about Gay Street? What about Maple Street? Do you think for 1 second that every single resident that was directly impacted by your Gay Street project and your Maple Street project was 100% happy with that? I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. I bet you there was at least one resident on each one of those streets that is 100% unhappy and 100% believes that you just destroyed their property value. Because I, along with maybe some of them, I'm not so fond of it. And I don't even live here, but when I go down it, I'm not fond of it as far as a curb appeal standpoint. And then what about all the increased traffic in the town? Do you not think that traffic counts haven't increased over the last 2 years? They have increased significantly since I bought property here. And the people that are on 161, they are affected by that directly by increased decibel levels. I guarantee it. They just don't say anything. But increased decibel levels are a nature of becoming a city, a nature of growing. And that's the whole reason why you went through the charter thing, because you knew you were going to grow. You knew you were going to face some of these obstacles. And I think that the writing has been on the wall for 3 years since I presented these ideas, and I wish that someone would have said something like, well, maybe we need to do this, or maybe we should have done that a long time ago, not now. And as far as the music at the park, I own the gas station at Tobin's, and there are 4 residents that are there, and on Sundays, I can plainly hear that music. And I can tell you, those are the things that have to make common sense. Because although I don't like the music that's being played there, I don't call the police chief and say, I can hear that and I want it stopped. It's too loud. I can't enjoy peace right there. I don't do that. We have ball diamonds that are clapping and whistling. We have children that are playing in the park, swimming, screaming, yelling. No one says anything. If we're gonna have decibel levels, we have to remember there's a lot of other things besides music that make noise all day. And this is a very short period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. That concludes our visitor section for this evening. If anybody has comments,
I just had a question.
Mhm.
Tim, are you referring to the alley that is between the Rummel Grill building and the next building over?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
because we haven't formally acted on anything yet for that, correct?
that was my understanding.
Yeah.
I talked to Mr. Cowhall and he said that from our verbal conversation we said that we had anticipated closing the alley, that he could go ahead and act. So it's in the design
Yeah.
plans for the streetscape, but we never, I mean, that was a question. It's like our understanding, do we have to make a motion on closing the
I
alley?
think we do. We haven't had like a formal council hearing. We all thought it was possibly a benefit, just, you know, as the alley to the parking lot is going to be a pedestrian-only alley, we thought that this might be another good addition, and Mr. Medici wanted to vacate that alley and keep it and create a pedestrian access and maybe have events there. And our thoughts were, well, it's city right of way. We felt that that piece would be better served as staying under city ownership, and perhaps we would just convert it. But nothing formal has been done yet, so.
I hope that that's what council decides, because that alley is completely different than the alley between the food pantry and Lovejoy Plaza. It's completely different. There's a public parking lot back there, and it makes perfect sense. When you have 80 people parking back there, 100 people, that people are gonna be driving. You don't want people driving and walking to the Greenery or wherever else they're going downtown. That is in between Bigelow Street, which is one of the main thoroughfares when Yuko has an event, when Rock the Clock has an event, when anyone has an event. That's a thoroughfare through there. There's no real reason for anyone to park over there to walk down that alley. It makes zero sense when you really look at the study of that. And it really does serve a purpose. It serves a purpose for multiple businesses, along with residents that I've seen go down that alley. I understand that was a thought, but it really doesn't have a lot of, support behind that as far as data goes. But thank you for not acting on that. I hope.
Mr. Cahal, the streetscape was scheduled to start today, the project.
Yes, sir.
I believe that alley was part of the streetscape project, was it not?
Yes, it was discussed. You remember, Councilman, there were some last minute adjustments to the plans to garner a access agreement from one of the property owners. During those discussions, I think as Ms. Pine mentioned, there was a property owner that desired the village to vacate the alley in its entirety. And through the course of those discussions, it was decided amongst council that it made more sense to hold on to that right of way to see what other opportunities and options there may be in the future. However, closing off that alley to vehicular access allowed for the addition of 2 more on-street parking spaces. And the thought would be is to mirror that like we are on the north side of Main Street for pedestrian access. Although there's not a public parking lot option to the south right now, it at least laid the groundwork and at least kept your options open for that. And so, the mayor asked me before the meeting, is there any kind of formal action council has to do? In terms of a vacation of a right-of-way, yes. In terms of modifying public right-of-way access, whether that's changing a street from 2-way to 1-way or restricting certain vehicles or all vehicles or the like, that can just be done administratively.
So as it stands today, that alley is going to be closed?
As it stands
Because
today,
it's part of the streetscape project?
yeah,
that was
so where
approved?
that drive apron is right now, the designs
Mm-hmm.
for the plans were to be is that that sidewalk section and curb would extend across that drive right now.
And there was an issue why that came up, and it is closed. I just, I'm not recalling, it had something to do with drainage or the way the sidewalk was?
It did assist in a drainage issue, as well as the benefit it provided to more on-street parking spaces. That was part of the
So
two discussion items.
it's a done deal
Okay.
then?
Yeah. I didn't realize, I thought we had a path.
I don't
That-
remember ever
we
saying we
nev-
would close it.
We never
The last
officially,
I remember is Chief McKee saying they still use it quite a bit.
and that's the thing. We were going to circle back and talk about it.
That's what I thought.
And then, yes, there was things happening, but I remember, and unfortunately, Mr. Terry's not here, and I don't want to put him into it, but he also said he doesn't want to make that a part of the negotiation of closing the alley. I mean, we talked about it, but we did not.
We did.
And we said it would be an addition to I'm sorry, Mr. Reed, it would gather us to more on-street parking, which we said that's a great, but we've never seen an official rendering of the streetscape. And that's the problem. Like we need official things before we sign off on things.
Mayor Carney, I would like to reiterate that fact, because this is a resounding thing that keeps coming up with the administrator of this village, of lack of communication to the public. And at first it came up last council meeting where he closed both sides of a street instead of one side of a street, did not let anyone know that, and did it anyways. And if he's gonna continue to exercise his authority by closing literal streets without your approval, I'm sorry, but I think that that's wrong. And I hope that you can go back and look at the charter and adjust the charter so that he does not have the authority to literally close down a street or close down an alley. I've asked at least 5 times to get a rendering, a picture of what's going on in between the food pantry alley and Lovejoy Plaza, and I have yet to see one single design of what my alley that affects me is going to look like, let alone the streetscapes. I have not seen that either. Funny that council members haven't seen the rendering. And I think that is just it's a continuing subject that keeps coming up here in this council chambers.
Madam Chair, this is, I think we have seen some drawings. They probably weren't complete drawings of the streetscape, and we've seen renderings of the plan for the sidewalk. I don't recall whether the alley was designated as going to be closed in those renderings, but we did have multiple discussions about the streetscapes, and we did vote to approve the streetscapes, and nobody raised an issue over the closing of the alley at that time, knowing full well that probably it was, at least I did, that it was going to be closed for the issues that have been pointed out. So to criticize the progress or the way that this streetscape project has come into fruition, this was a really good project for the village. It's going to be one of the things residents are going to be really happy to see and proud to see once we get all of it done. You know, we're going to get a big chunk of it done. So I take exception to the criticism about this is a surprise to everyone that it's going to be closed. It's just not the case, in my opinion.
Mr. Ree, I understand. I think it's just the level of, to see the complete visual, knowing what we're going to get, so then that we have a better transparency to our residents, so that when they ask, yes, we can look at the engineer drawings, but that's what we need to expect on these projects. It is the renderings, and I thought we had asked for renderings so that we could be able to show the residents. But are there any other comments?
Just one more quick thing. It's very consistent with Design and Review Board that we also see those renderings of the project. And it's a one-on-one thing to do.
Mr. Cahill, can you get I know we had talked about getting some renderings going. Have you had much luck from the engineering
I'm
firm?
waiting on a price for that. Hopefully I get something this week for the north side and beyond.
Thank you.
Do we have the engineered drawings that we could at least put out on our website or,
We do.
okay.
We can most definitely do that.
Moving out of the visitor section into the reports. For my mayor's report, wanted to circle back to last week. I attended the Plain City Business Association meeting briefly, and we talked about different ways that businesses and the village can collaborate together. One of them that will be coming up here next week, they are going to be hosting October 5th, a Meet the Candidate Night for the Village Council candidates here in council chambers. So that is being worked on through Plain City Business. We have coming up Pumpkins on Main Street is another opportunity that I'm trying to gather interest in the uptown and our Plain City businesses, as well of having like an open house style where businesses can hand out coupons, promotions, and then also provide a lighted pumpkin walk along Main Street, and that's October 23rd. This morning I participated in the Plain City Storytime with that they host every Monday, and I believe the police, the Plain City Police are next week. Chief, are you leading that one? He will be, I think that'll be a little bit more exciting. I did not have a vehicle like the fire department or the PD, so they're kind of like, what do you drive, Mayor Carney? And wasn't as exciting as the farmer previously as well. And then also, I did want to commend on the 9/11 event. I attended that at the Granary and participated in it, and it was a great event. So appreciate that, the promotion of that. And next week starting is Fire Safety Prevention Week. And I know I'm going to put you on the spot, Fire Marshal Adams, but if you'd like to talk about some of the events that you are going to be taking place. I know you weren't prepared for this, but.
The Fire Prevention Week runs October 3rd to the 9th. So coming up starting Sunday through Saturday next week. Sunday the 3rd, 1 to 4 will be the open house at the firehouse. So Lily's ice cream truck will be there, which everyone seems to enjoy. So we'll have one more chance at that, as well as some other exhibits and demonstrations. Throughout the week, we have several other events scheduled with schools, both at Plain City Elementary and Monroe Elementary, throughout the week. And as well as some other things that are going to come up next week that we haven't finalized yet. So I don't want to say that we're going to do something and it not happen. So, yeah. So
Look at your Facebook page and for updates and everything.
Be on Facebook and hopefully. Yeah.
We'll get together on getting a promo out there.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on the spot and taking the fire this evening. And also on Sunday at the park, Rummel Brill Insurance is providing a women's self-defense course, and I believe that is a 2.5-hour course at the gazebo. And Jenny Brill, the owner, has gone through the training herself, and she said it is very, very intense but eye-opening at the same time. So if you would like to sign up, there's a certain amount of spots open for that. So I know she has shared it to Moms in the Know, and I'll try to post it on my page as well. It's been a busy month of September, but looking forward to our October events, and I'll move on to Ms. Sonnet.
The other thing, I emailed out my audit last week, the digital copy. I also have a paper copy, so if anybody's interested in reading it on paper versus online, that's all I have.
And thank you for a very thorough audit. You did a wonderful job as always, so thank you. Chief McKee?
I just have a couple things, Mayor. First of all, we completed our panel interviews for an administrative assistant for the police department. I offered an applicant today a conditional offer, which she accepted. The position is dependent on her background investigation. And with that, I would like to thank Alicia Bosch She's the administrative assistant for the Union County Sheriff. She sat in on the panel interviews, and also our own Haley over there. She assisted with that, so I'd like to thank both of them. And then lastly, just a reminder that the Jonathan Miller High School Homecoming Parade is October 6th, starting at 6:30 p.m. It'll be the same route as the last 10 years or 20 years, whatever they've
That-
been.
Thank you. We have our work session scheduled for like our Uptown Walk during that time.
Ooh, I might need to change
We
that.
might need
Should
to-
we schedule our work session for the following Wednesday, maybe? Yeah, for the following Wednesday.
That would be a good, let me look at calendar.
Looks like I'll be in work session after all.
So that's October 13th. Do we have, it's not a planning and zoning meeting, 13th. Do we have any other committees that would be meeting on the 13th? Parks and Rec is on the 12th. Is that okay with everybody to move it to the 13th?
Still on the thunder, but yeah.
Sorry.
Do we have anything for the October 11th meeting?
Right. The parade's usually 30 minutes, if not shorter.
Yeah, but it's gonna get darker earlier, so it'll be hard to,
Right.
yeah.
So we need to make a motion to change that meeting.
Yes.
What, I'm sorry.
Moving the, work session from the 6th to the 13th.
Mayor can just call.
Okay,
Okay.
6 p.m.
6 or 6
Meet in
p.m.
the Uptown.
Meet uptown at 6 and meet here at 6.
At the old municipal building, we can
Yeah.
park there.
yeah, that's a regularly scheduled meeting of council. It would probably take a motion to move it, and you'd need to publicize the move also.
I think Mr.
Yeah.
Cowell said the mayor can call it, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a regularly scheduled meeting. You have 2 meetings a month for ordinance that are they're scheduled, so it's considered a special meeting, so
Well,
if the mayor never calls it for the 6th, it doesn't happen. for the 6th.
Well, it's not.
Okay, for 13th, okay.
code it is. Well,
All
not,
right.
well, see, we have a charter now. It
All
says it's a regular meeting.
Okay.
and special
Anything
meetings or
else, Chief
something
McKee?
else. I mean, I'd be.
And just lastly, I'd like to thank
Sure.
Lisa Fox,
Yes.
right, for the, she's the one who put the event on, the fundraiser for the police department and the fire department. I think it also included other fire departments too, right?
Two others.
Okay. So I just like to make sure you thank her for that, so, and Trainer. That's all I have at that time.
Thank
At
you.
this time, sorry.
Mr. Cowell, Village Administrator.
I have nothing to report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I missed it, but do we have a completion date on the parking lot yet?
Their schedule that they provided, they should be done around the 1st of November.
Okay, because those dumpsters in front of the flag mural aren't just blocking the flag mural, they're blocking the alley. And when people park at the real estate office,
Yeah.
you can't, it's difficult to get through there. I had someone the other day say, if they park all the way over in that parking lot,
Okay.
then the alley is blocked.
I see. Okay. We'll move those again.
Okay, sorry, I just,
No, that's a good point.
I got a second complaint
Yeah,
today.
no.
So,
Sometimes our trash haulers don't always put them back where they were either.
thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Rucker, Council President.
Well, you already stole my thunder.
Sorry for stealing your thunder.
Work session is not gonna be the 6th, it's gonna be the 13th, 6 o'clock, meet uptown at the old municipal building. We're gonna walk the streets for half an hour and then come back here, meet about 6:30-ish.
So what time do we meet at the admin building?
600, or 1800,
Okay,
6 o'clock.
I got
That's
that.
6 o'clock for civilians.
Civilians, thank you.
Uptown, right.
Mr. Lafayette,
No report.
Capital Improvements, Ms. Giammo.
Yes, our committee, which I believe is now fully merged, will be meeting personnel and finance on the 29th.
So basically, okay, we can combine those on this agenda,
Yeah, I
okay,
think so.
okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
BZA, Ms. Brill, would you give the update on BZA?
Sure. BZA met this month. They had one application for a special permit for a model home in Madison Meadows, and they voted to approve that that night as it was submitted. And that is all.
Thank you. Planning and zoning, we met last Wednesday and we approved the hamlet on the Darby site plan.
Final development plan.
The final development plan, excuse me, and welcomed, that was our first meeting in person, I believe, that we were able to have, and our next meeting will be October 20th. Parks and Recreation?
Yeah, we are starting to plan for Christmas under the clock. Camping's doing well with winter camping full and well over $250,000 in revenue. And there was talk of a possible grant for a dog park. We've also on the 16th got the Fall Festival coming up. If you wanted to talk a little more about that.
Oh, yes. On the Fall Fest at the park, it's from 5 to 8 p.m. and Plain City Presbyterian has stepped up and they're going to have bounce houses and a couple face painters. We have several craft vendors that have agreed to come and set up, as well as some baked goods. October 16th. It is not an OSU game, so it should be well attended. We have food trucks, we have Rocky Mountain Coffee, Little E's, and Biscuit Boss up there, and then of costume contests, and we are having Gus the Squash Carver. So if you have not got a chance to watch him carve a large pumpkin, it's quite impressive. So there's still time. I'd like to get everything turned in by September 30th so we can get everything organized and the logistics worked out. And our PD is bringing their trailer and the music for the event. So we're looking forward to a large event for that. Thank you, Ms. Heineman. And then personnel and finance, I know Ms. Giammo kind of covered a little bit of it.
She covered a lot of it. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, we are a merged committee now, and so we'll work out some things about reporting stuff and things like that. We'll probably keep the same lines on that. We're working on the wage and benefits package for this year, and also the 2022 budget. So we have our hands full with that. And we'll be doing that Wednesday evening at 7.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Fire Board?
Next Thursday at 6:30.
I'll be attending.
Okay.
I apologize, I'm
Yeah.
last one, I swear.
Yep, last one is alternate for me.
This year.
Yeah, we're not gonna be on council next year. Yeah, so that's nothing new to report since the last council meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just Fire Safety Prevention Week and everything.
Yes.
Check your smoke detector.
Yes.
Design Review Board.
We have a meeting here Wednesday night at 6:30. We have 2 applications to hear.
Thank you. And we left the Rules Committee on here until later on, I believe, is our motion. So we don't have anything to report there. Okay, moving out of reports into old business. Second reading Resolution 34-2021, a service resolution in support of the proposed annexation of property containing 79.644 acres, more or less, from Darby Township, Madison County, Ohio, to the Village of Plain City, Madison County, Ohio, pursuant to the requirement of Section 709.023 Ohio Revised Code.
Motion to approve resolution 34-2021.
Second.
Rucker,
Yes.
Giammo,
Yes.
Heineman,
No.
Klein,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Second reading resolution 35-2021, a resolution regarding zoning buffers and a proposed annexation of property containing 79.644 acres more or less from Darby Township, Madison County, Ohio to the Village of Plain City, Madison County, Ohio, pursuant to the requirements of section 709.023C Ohio Revised Code.
Resolution, or motion to approve resolution 35-2021.
Second.
Reed,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Heineman,
No.
Giano,
Yes.
Rucker,
Yes.
Second reading resolution 36-2021, a resolution of commitment to sustainable 2050.
Motion to approve resolution 36-2021.
Second.
Rucker,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Giano,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Heineman,
Yes.
Moving out of old business into new business, is there a motion to dissolve the Rules Committee?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Chair, I just want to make a comment about it. I didn't really have a problem when it came up last week with it. I don't have a problem with it now, except that I think it's a mistake. Rules committees and legislation committees, are frequently occur combined. I think the village could really use one right now, especially with all the rules work that needs to be done in terms of creating procedural rules and addressing some charter amendments that people have suggested. But, council doesn't want to do it that way, then we shan't. So.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Any other comments? Discussion, I mean?
I mean, the only thing I would add is I think I can definitely appreciate Mr. Reed's comments, but I do think it will be beneficial to have us all around the table discussing this, so we can just knock it out together instead of having to go through several different rounds and bring it back and start over, so.
Thank you, Ms. Giano.
Rucker,
Yes.
Giano,
Yes.
Heineman,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Reed,
No.
So should we add this to our work?
That's why I
session?
just wrote down the Rules
All right,
Committee.
yes,
Thank you.
Dedicate, a certain period of time
Mm-hmm.
to that.
Thank you, Mr. Rucker. Is there a motion to appoint Nate Metzger to the Board of Zoning Appeals?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just had a couple of questions on it. I assume when we get these that somebody has interviewed or talked to the person.
I called Mr. Metzger. He's very excited to give back. I didn't mean to cut you off, but just, yes, I did call him and had a nice discussion and vetted his application and looked over. And so that's why with confidence I can suggest that he would be a good fit for the BZA.
Right, and all of the appointments so far have been excellent as far as I can tell. The thing that caught my attention when I was reading his explanation of why he was interested is that he's interested in revitalization of the uptown area, which I'm not sure it fits on BZA. Maybe it does, and I don't understand what BZA does.
Oh.
But let me just say
Yeah,
the rest
that's
of this, that it really works on a committee that we don't have at this point, which I've mentioned before as some kind of an economic development committee or some other committee that deals with these kinds of issues. Having said that, let's get them on BZA and maybe we can work towards getting a committee that really targets what his interest seems to be.
And that was my thought. So when he applied for Design Review Board. And I said, well, we actually have a full Design Review Board, except for our upcoming discussion comment. But I said, we have a spot on BZA. Here's what the Board of Zoning Appeals takes care of. I said, can you rescind your application but mark BZA. So he just did not reapply that portion. But I think BZA is it's a good committee that, to start to Gateway. The Gateway Committee too, but I'm just thrilled that we have residents who are very excited. I mean, he sent multiple emails to inquire about the application process, so I appreciate that enthusiasm. So we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Rucker?
Yes.
Giano?
Yes.
Heineman?
Yes.
Pine?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
And motion to amend conditions on the Hamlet on the Darby residential development.
I just had a couple questions before, because just looking at the packet and the size of the site plan, did the number of buildings change at all, or?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
As did the number of total units.
I knew the number of total units changed.
Yeah, the buildings went
The
down.
number of buildings went down, the number of units went down.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have an issue with this slight increase in the density.
My concern with density is, I mean, we have density goals or targets set for a reason, and to just ignore those whenever we feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, we can come and get a site plan approved and say, oh, you know what, now we want to change it now. And you're already got your, it's another gateway, you already got your foot in the door, and now, well, we're going to change it and do this instead. And this doesn't sit well with me.
Do you have a feel, I'm just asking your opinion, because I don't necessarily disagree with it, that this should be looked at. Do you have a feel for what that really looks like on the ground?
No, I'm going based, I am assuming that whoever set these density limits to begin with had that feel, since they're probably the subject matter expert and I'm not. So that's why I'm using what their recommendation is.
Okay, did this go to planning and zoning, or?
It was just
And
approved
you guys, I'm
on.
gonna trust that you vetted this and you're okay with what the density was gonna happen. I only ask this because, you know, I live in Country Place condominiums, and we have duplex housing there, and it's fairly not dense. At least it doesn't feel dense. So, you know, if I had more time, I'd get out and compare what I think that might look like. You know, planning and zoning has vetted it and is okay with it. I'm probably going to be okay with it too. I did have, if there's nothing else, I do have a comment on something else if we're done with this issue.
Is it still pertaining to Hamlet on the Darby?
Yes.
Okay, I believe, in the thought from planning and zoning was that because it kind of like, it was in the same sight lines as the other apartment complex adjacent to it on Fairfield Drive. Ms. Brill, help me if that was the comment. That was the feeling of planning and zoning, that it helped with that sight line, but the ones that were going toward, like, they were all single first floor
Sure.
dwellings.
So the, what's called their garden ranches, which is the one-story flats, are on the southern portion of that to kind of more mimic those single-family homes there, and then those lofted units are to the north. And that was to kind of help with, as you mentioned, those sight lines and to kind of mimic the surrounding character.
Okay, are we in the limits of the density that have been established, or are we kind of crossing that?
So there is limits on and how we measure residential density is a little interesting, but they were already exceeding that density in the preliminary.
Okay.
And then now, because they added those additional lofts, it does increase the density a little bit. The footprint changes slightly. You have a few less buildings, but they kind of keep within that same area that they're proposing. There's still an open space near the creek.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So what about the square footage of the units themselves, the individual units? Has that decreased as they increase the number of units?
I'm sorry, Mr. Rucker.
The square footage of the individual units, did each individual unit, is it gonna, are they still gonna be the same size, or are they gonna be smaller now than what was originally approved?
Sure, and we have,
If you would like 5 minutes, we can illustrate all this for you, I think.
Sure, yeah, I would like to know.
Great. We could actually pull that up. And worthy questions, and we came here today to address those and bring some comfort to it. The actual units on the single stories stay exactly the same in terms of square footage. We reconfigured it a little bit to make it fit better on the site. And then what we did, we added what we call a lofted unit. So we've flipped ahead a little there. So just a reminder of what the scheme of these units are all about. They're all front-facing into these courtyards. And so one thing when you talk about density and have concern about density, you think about a typical apartment plan, which is usually a parking lot facing your front door, and then you have a back patio that usually is kind of poorly constructed and poorly created. In this case, we have these courtyards where everybody has a chance to build community and face each other and be away from the cars, away from the noise, and have that sense of security for these 55 and over folks that live here. So if we flip to the next one, the new plan, and what really drove this plan, we've been away from it for 2 years. This plan came into being. It took a little while to get it done. It took a little while to get through those layers and steps. We had ordinance change that had to be effected during this. And during that 18 months or so, that was a period where there was significant cost increase in the marketplace. And what we didn't want to do was build a project that in the end, the only way it was going to work was come to Plain City with rents that made relatively little sense in Plain City. So what's happened, or what we've done in the meantime, we've teamed up with a company called United Church Homes out of Marion, Ohio, one of the largest senior housing providers in the United States. And so with their input and guidance, what we did was we left all the units, I think the next slide will show you this. We left all the units in red, essentially the same as they were previously. And then the units that are in green, which again are at the back of the property, that are behind the Fairfield project, and they really face off to the quarry and the Darby Creek in the back of Fairfield Homes. What we did there, we want to make sure we had first floor bedrooms. And that's what United Church Homes wanted to have, and it's with the concept of the project. And so what we did, we collaborated and figured out how to do a lofted unit. So upstairs we have the bedroom and a little bonus space. And there's also the opportunity to have a little bit of storage over the top of the garage out of that upper level. And so by doing that, by taking that other bedroom and moving it upstairs, that allowed on the footprint, and one of these illustrations shows the old footprint, the new footprint, but they're essentially the same footprint. There's a little off screen there. The single story units. You can see them down there at the bottom. There you go. So again, those are very similar to what we had before. A little tweaking plan, not much. And then we go to the lofted unit. That's the back of the singles. One more. There you go. So the lofted unit, again, actually, the comments from staff and zoning and others that looked at this, there's actually a lot of preference for this unit over the single story unit. It's a little more in keeping with the scheme that we looked at the beginning of those image shots. It's got a little bit more height, but not much, and still has the same porches on the front. The living units in these living room areas actually are a story and a half. So there's no floor. I think in the next plan you'll see the lofted areas. So the front portion of that is a high bay. You got to stair up to a bedroom and a bathroom and a little bit of the work area. So again, from a footprint point of view, from a green space point of view, nothing changed. And the other thing that happened on the previous plan, we were way over parked. So we had, everybody's got a one-car garage, we got parking space out behind the garage, and then you have scatter around the site, there's additional parking. And I think the code here is 0.7 parking spaces per unit. I think the last pass of this, we're somewhere around 2.4 or something, so we're way over the parking requirement. And again, still have met a very stringent hard surface coverage. So we've got lots of green area, all that stayed intact. And so when it's all said and done, we feel this is actually a better plan. It gives a little more diversity of unit types. And it still fulfills the objectives from the beginning of these scorecards and how that works. So when it's all said and done, what we really wanted to do was create a project that hit rents that were right for Plain City. Those few additional units really changes the leverage by land costs, development costs, the tap fees, all those things. By a few more units, that brings our rents down. And that was important. We felt for the community to make sure this is a project that sits properly price-wise.
Thank you for that.
You bet.
Kind of hard to visualize that on my phone.
It is. Yeah, I think this is a project we'll all be very proud of.
We'd always ask in the last comment at some point.
There's a real market for it in Plain City. It's a great spot.
This is all
I
55 and
appreciate the
older
clarification.
housing?
It is. It's 80% have to be, one person in the household has to be 55 and over.
Right, yeah, I live in a 55 and older community.
Sure.
Not that I'm 55. But, okay, while you're up there, I just had a couple other questions on it. This is gonna have a trail next to the Darby Creek, right, on the Hamlet side of the creek, the west side. That's gonna go extend the entire length of your Hamlet development and then end at the bridge.
It's going to get from South Chillicothe Street back to the bridge. And exactly how we get there, we're still talking. We're happy to wherever is the best place to put it. The one thing that we'll need to work out, there's been some shifts in the nationwide permit for the Darby Accord since we were last here. And one of the things, they're still very happy to accommodate the plan as it exists. We actually have a letter from them that says so. But what's happened in the meantime, there's a screwy thing where if you're running a pathway within the riparian corridor next to Darby Creek or any creeks they run now, if it runs parallel to the creek, they stop the measurement of the riparian corridor at the hard surface of the pathway. So you get no credit for anything upstream. Right?
So if you put a path that's like a barrier then
Yes.
and blocks you from other benefits for your
And so
development.
you can do a gravel path, but we really don't think folks that are gonna live here should be on gravel paths. And bikeways is really not ideal. So we're very ready to go back to the EBA and talk to them. We know that very well. We're gonna talk through this one again
Yeah,
and see if
okay.
that's the right place. You can go perpendicular, which is.
So what does this cost you then, in terms of dollars, to put that path parallel to Darby Creek? You said you give up some riparian rights or something?
Well, what happens is when the nationwide permits now for the Darby Accord watershed require a certain setback from the edge of the waterway.
Right.
And if you don't meet that, you have to offset that somewhere else. And
Okay.
so if you put the pathway too far down towards Darby Creek, there has to be and there's layers of 1, 2, 1, 3, 4, one depends on how close you are, what the conditions are, it's pretty complex.
Okay,
So
that would cost you space then in the
it
development
would
also?
cost, we'd have to go somewhere else on the Darby watershed, buy acreage and give it up.
Okay, so the plan then is to take it over from South Chillicothe, let's say straight over to the railroad bridge. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, we're gonna work with Taylor and sort out the best place to put it.
Okay,
And
but it's gonna go from
It's gonna get all the way
Chillicothe,
to-
more or less directly to the railroad bridge.
It'll
Yeah,
get all
is
the
that
way.
right? Okay. Is the railroad bridge part of this project, making it suitable for, as a bike trail or a walking path?
Okay, let me, how far should I go with this discussion? The railroad bridge is owned by Metro Parks today.
Right.
The right-of-way from the railroad bridge to the west, as far as right-of-way exists in the city limits, is also owned by Metro Parks. And Metro Parks is happy to, we've got extra green space that's floodplain. They're happy to actually absorb that into their holdings
Right.
long-term.
Okay.
And then what they're aiming to do is reconnect connect, and Nathan's been working on this too, connect from the bridge to the Heritage Trail.
So what the village needs to do is not talk to you about you're gonna get the path over to the vicinity of the railroad bridge. We need to be talking to Metro Parks about getting the bridge put in suitable condition for a walking path, and the part that goes up then on the east side of Darby Creek up to 161.
Right.
Is that correct? Okay.
And they're very much
That was
willing-
kind of confusing, maybe in the documentation, the way I read it. I'll take the blame for misunderstanding.
Yeah, they're very ready to have that dialogue and
Yeah.
extend it even further.
Right, okay, so, yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so just one other small thing. That trail part going from South Chillicothe is locked into this project. That's gonna happen. There's no way not to do that if you do your project.
Right, it's part of
It's
a
part of the
conditional
development plan.
approval.
part of the approval.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted, because, this trail business has been a moving target for decades. And so we're this close to getting something that looks like something. I just want to make sure it's going to be there.
Any other questions for Mr. McCabe or discussion?
I have a question for Taylor or you, since you were at the planning and zoning meeting. Were any of the residents of the single unit dwellings in attendance? Do they?
No, there's
Okay.
nobody in attendance.
Okay.
I have had one conversation with a neighbor, and it's actually been a little while, but it was post our original approval. And the discussion at that time, I think there was always some discussion that there'd be some units to be taller, talk to them about those are
Being
they're bad.
right.
And that was the end of the conversation.
Yeah, that seems to honestly be the largest issue in apartment complexes that abut single unit dwellings is the height of the buildings.
And they're 2 stories, houses, 2 stories.
Right.
All over that area, so it's not any problem.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Is there a motion to amend conditions on the Hamlet on the Darby residential development?
So moved.
Second?
Rucker,
Yes.
Giano,
Yes.
Heineman,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
First reading resolution 37-2021, a resolution authorizing the sale of village property. Moving out of new business into our discussion items, I put on the discussion items the noise ordinance. Wanted to circle back this because I know at our previous meeting we had talked about a committee after having a moment, because sometimes it's hearing the comments, taking into account and really thinking about it. The 6 council members and mayor are elected to make the tough decisions. I feel that if we put it to a committee, it's not going to be a win-win, or it could be a lose-lose situation. So we're elected to make those decisions. So I wanted to put that back on there, and knowing comments, wanted to get council members' thoughts on taking that out of that opportunity of the committees and putting it back into a work session and diving into it.
Well, okay, if no one else wants to comment on it. When the original idea came up, I didn't say anything. I just wondered how this was going to work, because there is a hard line in the sand dividing people on this issue, and the benefit obviously is to have people continue to talk to each other, which is a good thing. You can't ever, end up battling unless they start throwing things at each other. So, and who knows, some good ideas might come out of that. I've seen discussion about eliminating it because people on the one side of the issue don't believe the other side can move on this in any meaningful kind of a way. And if I say something that's mischaracterizing or interpreting what I'm hearing and seeing, then please feel free to correct. But I would say that's equally true then on the other side, because that kind of position says that, well, if you're not gonna move, then I don't wanna talk to you, which just reflects on them the same kind of position, because I'm certainly not gonna move, and you're gonna have to do all the changing in order for us to have any meaningful conversation. So I don't believe we've had any kind of meetings like that. Is that with the committee or anything like that?
We haven't, we have not taken a committee stance. It was just discussed, but
Yeah.
I wanted to bring it back to council and say, let's talk, let's work on it like we were planning to
Okay.
in a work session.
That's fine.
Okay.
So I would, before I voted on something like this, and I'm not sure, do you guys know a vote? I'm not sure we voted on it to establish it. I would want to talk to the people on the anti-noise side to see how they feel about that opinion that was expressed about it, this, looking at Facebook and message boards and forming an opinion about the other side is probably not the best way to do it. So I would prefer to talk to those people and see how they felt about not having an opportunity to sit down and have serious discussions.
Well, Mr.
That's my opinion.
I think that's why we are elected to represent, and at the end of the day, we make the decision. And
Yes, but we need to stay in touch with the residents also at the same time, because they're the ones who elected you.
Maybe we should have a public hearing when we do.
Well, we have to have a public hearing
if
anyway.
Well, we will have a public hearing. We can't pass it without a public
Well,
hearing.
I mean, just like maybe before we act on it, like have just,
You mean like a rollout kind of?
yes,
meeting?
Like when we did the, when we
on
changed,
this-
yeah, when we
on
changed,
this ordinance.
when the Planning and Zoning Commission met years ago, and we spent probably a year going through the nuisance code and things of that nature, we constantly invited residents in to talk on different segments on what's coming up each section, and so.
The property maintenance code, how many meetings did I come
That's
up?
right, yeah, that's
Did I come up and Amy or one of them, I think we were the only two coming up to those meetings, I believe.
There was a fair turnout
It
on
felt-
some,
it
depending
felt
on the
like it.
issue.
It felt like it.
Yeah, depending on the issue.
Yeah, but,
You helped us on the bees.
Yeah, and then I think also
And the
having, Mr. Dawson, when he has his study complete, to give to council to evaluate. I still think we also need some readings from our police staff with a noise meter. Just all of these things should be evaluated, as we go through this. So, and I don't think it's going to be something that gets done in one work session, so.
No, it's definitely, and that's what, and that is like, I know it was said it was taking, we need to do our due diligence and take time and not rush into it. And we understand, like, we have a wonderful fall season lineup and stuff, and people are just gonna have to be patient as we work through this, because we don't wanna take this lightly. As both sides have stated, I appreciate Ms. Scott coming and giving her input, and I appreciate the residents as well. So and the business, because it is exciting times in Plain City. So we need to, that's why I wanted to put it on the discussion item and say, let's pump the brakes a little bit, see where we're at. We know it's going to take some time, but that's how it works and government works.
So how are we going to proceed on this then? We have
We're gonna go
the
as a
old
work
code, old ordinance that is on the books. We have a new proposal for a different approach. So how are we going to, I'm sorry, I just want to get that, finish my sentence, John. So what do you think?
I believe we already established we're gonna work on this in work session.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I think what you're asking is, how are we going to get we're going to look at the different data points and making sure that we take all our own staff reading, because they said they were going to put together,
Right.
different, what is our public works
I probably-
sound like, or, different things,
We've
so we
already
know.
started that whole,
I probably need to keep making this point because it's an important one, and it's at the base of the residents' complaints about this, is doing my own research, discovered that hearing for humans starts at 0 dB. Okay, when you're looking at decibel levels. And I think that's what the residents want on their front porch is 0 dB. Regardless of what changes.
Completely
like-
unrealistic.
Yeah, that is so.
That's completely unrealistic, Frank Reed.
It's not unrealistic to expect that you should not have your property disturbed by external noise that's unnecessary.
So they don't want it there at all.
That's their position, okay? And I'm endorsing that position.
They're not-
So-
they're talking
so-
about it.
We're gonna have a work session on this, so I've probably said too much already. John, maybe we can have kind of public input on this. It sounds like
At some point,
At some point.
we've already established that we will.
okay.
I think we've already had public input.
Well,
Now the
yeah.
next step is us to look at our research,
Right.
decide if we're going to change the ordinance. When we have the ordinance changed, then we hear from the public again.
Right,
I mean,
okay.
people
I
have
think
been
that
very
seems to be-
active with their voices and have been
I
very
mean, can
engaged.
The Frank is saying they're not gonna be happy until it's removed. They don't want it there at
I
all.
think that's what they're saying.
Like
Sharon.
whether you're for it or
Is that what you're
against it,
saying,
the
though?
noise ordinance.
Pardon me?
Is that what
Yeah,
you're in
him
favor
and
of
his
as well?
cohorts.
I'm
Is getting rid of it
people
altogether
not
so we don't
being-
hear it at all?
Might not, well, no, they don't have to hear that noise. That's their property.
So that's what you're in favor of, is completely getting rid of the noise?
Well, the current
I'm in
noise,
favor of, no, I don't care about the noise. I care about it, if I had a property there, I would care about it being on my property. I
Right,
don't care if it stays in the granary
okay.
or wherever,
Well,
but I
So if I
care
don't wanna
about it
hear
on
my
my
neighbor's
front porch.
kids, or I don't wanna hear my neighbor's
And so,
mower,
you
or,
know, if you wanna have the discussion right now, we can, but, you know, if you wanna wait till work session, we can have it.
let's move on into work session and wait till staff has their interpretation and not take and go with that, but, okay.
Mayor, can I ask? how
Hang on a
many
second.
actually
D-
complained?
We have, to get public out of the visitor section, we have to ask if
yeah,
anybody,
I'm fine with her asking.
Can I make one comment?
hold on a second. Ms. Scott?
Can I ask how many complaints you have received?
I don't.
it would be public record, I would
It would be,
think.
yeah.
I know of two.
Yeah, no, we've probably received, if I had to guess, maybe 8
Eight out of all residents in town.
on, noise complaints from the granary.
Yes, sir.
Probably 8, and the majority of those are from the same people.
Okay.
So, I mean, if we're gonna, if you wanna know the facts, it's from the same people. The problems with the noise ordinance, and I've heard Mr. Lear, I understand everything he's saying, is that a lot of times when we get the noise complaints, the people ask us just to have them turn it down. They don't want anything done. They don't want to go to court. They don't want to file charges. They don't want to do that stuff. Because they don't want to be, I guess, bothered by going to court and testifying and all that stuff. Because basically without the crime, or without the victim, you don't have a crime. So a lot of times when we get there, most of the time those people just say, can you ask them to turn it down? We ask them to turn it down. Most of the time, I'm not just saying the granary, I'm saying any place we get a complaint, they turn it down. Okay, then it's settled at that time. But if you want to know the true numbers, I can get the true numbers for you for the complaints.
Mr. Lear, is that correct?
How's that?
Is your name Mr. Lear?
Yes, unfortunately.
Is it true that bass music, which comes from the granary, it travels further than just regular music? I mean, and nowadays all the bands have that bass.
Yeah,
And
it's
it
all about
travels
bass.
further.
Miss-
I said it's all about this.
Well, and I appreciate,
I got it.
and this is the problem, we're not going to solve anything this evening, so we're gonna keep moving.
But I think this is the input that we need.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice.
Well, that's
to
what the
discuss
public
it.
hearing
is,
Like
right?
everybody that's either for it or
discussion.
against it. 'Cause I mean, this is the only time we're all in a room together. No.
We change that, we go to the greenery.
Yeah, we could.
I'm going to take,
The other thing I was gonna say is, I think it comes down to the music that's being played. Because, let's face it, from May to July, if you live on Park Street, you hear kids playing, but everybody likes that. Everybody hears that, that's the sound system.
I think we need, I think, you know, I've been there, I've walked around the granary. When I've walked around it, I've walked around the whole area when people have said it's loud. I haven't heard it that loud. Now, I'm younger, I understand that. And I understand people living in town, but it also is where you live. When you live in town, if you live by the ballpark, you're gonna have to put up with noise. It's that simple. It's where you live.
May I say something? I'll make it quick.
Yes.
I live behind the school, the old elementary school. And Tim, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, it was okay. The noise levels weren't as loud. It's not all the time. It's, I think, certain bands and settings on the soundboards. But I can hear the music from the granary better than I can hear the noise from the ball diamonds and the music in the park on Sundays. Seriously. I hear the whistles at the pool, but that's until 9 o'clock. And that's, you know, that's done and over with. But I seriously hear the music sometimes louder than I hear the cheering at the ball diamond. Just to put a perspective. I mean, I live on Grant, so I'm like right in between Grant, Second, and Park. And, you know, Friday night it was loud. I expected it, but the weekend before it wasn't. I could barely even hear. So it's not all the time. And I don't expect silence, it's just a little quieter. So.
Okay, thank you all. As we continue to work through this, we ask for patience on it. Okay.
I'm wondering if maybe we should look at calling a special work session
Just for noise ordinance, okay.
Have everybody come out, seriously.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's, that way we can have an open forum and it's dedicated just to that. We're not gonna have, you know, any sidebars, no, you know, taking off in the left field chasing squirrels. We're gonna talk about the noise ordinance.
I would just add one recommendation that we wait before we have that, is that we compile the data that staff is
Absolutely,
putting together, and we have
absolutely.
that, so there's a
But, I
context
mean,
to it.
Do you guys think that sounds like a decent idea as well? Okay.
Yeah.
You're okay? Is council okay with that?
So when do you think
Discussion is
approximate
reasonable,
time?
not.
Whenever once we get the data collected.
So maybe the November work session.
Probably, well, it would be a special work
A
session.
special work
It'd be in addition to the other work sessions. that we're
Probably
having.
later in October or earlier.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. What were you
Sounds
saying,
like a
Ms.
great
Bob?
I was just saying, in hopes that the discussion would be reasonable to both parties.
Well, yeah, that's
aside
the
from
point.
No noise whatsoever.
No one's gonna get shut down at this discussion unless they chase squirrels off in the left field. Then they'll get shut down. But other than that,
And I like that idea because I know that everybody keeps showing up to the meetings and it seems
and I
like.
know they want to have their say.
Yeah, yes. And then there's other items, so I think a special work
And
session
I'll be
dedicated
honest
is-
with you, I am tremendously encouraged to see this many people out here as opposed to
Yeah.
complaining on Facebook. 'Cause
Mhm.
usually that's what it is. Everybody bitches about something on Facebook, but they never bother to come to a meeting and talk about it. So I'm encouraged to see this, and I would like to see more of it, to be perfectly honest with you. So.
Yes. So thank you for your time, and we will continue to work on it and get back and advertise that special meeting. Moving out of the noise ordinance into hearing for wastewater plant expansion.
Wait. Oh, here, I'm sorry. Jeez, I thought executive session.
Oh, no,
I'm gonna go back to sleep now.
No, hearing for the wastewater plant expansion that is coming up. That is a public hearing, Mr. Cahall. Did you, or, because I put this on, and that is October 19th?
19th, yeah, it'll be either at 6 or 6:30. We'll forward the announcement on to council. It'll be at the high school. We'll be meeting with our legal counsel and design team. We're supposed to meet today, but it didn't. We had a little scheduling snafu. So we'll be meeting again, hopefully tomorrow or Wednesday. Just trying to map out what all our presentation will be in regards to the MPDS applications in front of Ohio EPA. At that meeting, there'll be solicitation of proponent and opponent and interested party comments on the application. But we're looking at not only as the applicant, our presentation to the EPA as well, but also having discussions amongst other interested parties so that they can be sure to voice their opinions on the application as well.
Okay, any questions? And then Mr. Rucker's UPCO seat on Design Review Board.
Yeah, just real quick, and something to look down the road. UPCO is going to be disbanding, which raises the question, what are we gonna do about the UPCO seat on the Design Review Board? Do we replace that with, say, a citizen position, or do we just do away with that seat on the board completely? And I guess part of that's a question for you, Mr. Locke.
Ultimately, it's a council decision, but, you know, obviously it would require an amendment to our ordinance, so there would be
Right.
a legislative change that we'd have to make. I think it's up to council to discuss whether to replace it or to remove it or to substitute it with something else, bearing in mind that there is always some difficulty, finding the architect or the engineer or somebody with specialized knowledge that it would be helpful.
And council, if I can weigh in, I think that ordinance says where possible, those positions, so if that UPCO were to disband, then it would just default to another citizen who's interested.
Or is the number set or the position set though?
The number.
The number, so 7 members, and those positions, the architect.
Okay.
That's a where
Just says
possible
where
thing,
possible.
which would be impossible.
Right.
Clearly.
You don't have,
If
yeah,
you
you don't have
have
it, you don't, if you don't have
So
an
in theory, you could fill it with whomever, what do you call that, kind of person?
Like an at-large person?
At-large person, thank you. So that would certainly be possible to do that.
Okay,
Cool.
putting that on for
Thank you.
work session, okay? That, we are done with our discussion topics. We are getting ready to go into executive session, so we will have to ask everybody to leave the meeting. We will not be coming back with any decisions, so thank you for coming out. Motion
We're gonna
to
knock out a wall here in a bit.
go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, section 121.22G3, conferences with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are subject of pending or imminent court action. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Sorry, my ears are. Yes.
Fiona?
Yeah.
Heineman?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Thanks.
Mr. Reed?
I think yes.